Welcome to the Awakened Human Podcast, the place to be for highly progressive yet extremely grounded intuitive guidance, energetic support, metaphysical tools, and higher consciousness for highly successful, ambitious, soul-centered visionaries and leaders like you who want to make a global impact and achieve your highest fulfillment by aligning with your soul's true divine agenda and your role in God's plan of lighted creation, and by utilizing your divine gifts, talents, and abilities from the higher realms. We do this by working with the non-physical realms of higher guidance, energy, intuition, and powerful metaphysical tools for healing and transformation. We understand that the real change and transformation that's being called for on planet Earth and in our own lives and our own businesses doesn't come from outside of us, but rather from within. And that the change that we desire to experience in our lives and in our world requires us to change from the inside. I'm your host, Lori Ann Spagna. I'm a best-selling author, spiritual catalyst, intuitive, energy worker, ascension guide, multidimensional channel, animal communicator, visionary, lightworker, and luminary. I have dedicated my entire professional life to helping thousands and thousands of humans and animals all over the world in service and contribution to the light, which is the expansion, the upliftment, the evolution of humanity, to awaken, to uplift, and to align with our true divine source, which exists within each and every one of us. It is my passion, joy, and purpose to share this information, energy, and consciousness with you. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing time with me. Let's get started. Okay, well, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for all of you. So grateful you're sharing time and space with me. This is the second in a series of 3, what I think will be 3. I'm told it'll be 3, but it could be 4. I guess that depends on how much I cover in each episode, because I just, believe it or not, almost everything really is sort of semi-channeled, even when I'm not. I'm always listening and being told what to say and relaying it. Even when I'm not in a full-on channel, I will do another episode in the future as well about channeling and about how I channel. So, but this is the second in a series of, I think, 3 episodes on the conversation about shadow work and trauma healing. So today we're going to go a little deeper into the topic area of trauma healing. And again, this will sort of dovetail. There'll be some overlap with what the last episode covered, but I want to go deeper into this conversation so that you can understand, because a lot of people, when you hear the word trauma or trauma healing, most humans will believe or equate that to some kind of physical or emotional trauma. Okay, here's a good example, right? A person was raped, or they were beaten, or they were sexually abused or physically abused. That's typically what our society thinks of as trauma healing, or they were in some kind of like deadly car accident, and all of those things are horrible, right? Or they were a veteran, for example, a veteran of some kind of war. That is real trauma. And yes, we are not denying that at all. But when I'm referring to trauma healing, what we don't realize in our society is that humans are living with like an inordinate, is that the right word? Okay, an enormous amount, I'm not even going to struggle with that word, an enormous amount of trauma. Most of the adult humans alive at this time were either born from or are the descendants of humans who were born. I'm going to link this to astrology, but I'll make the point, so stay with me. We were born from the era of the 30s. We're all the descendants ultimately, right? From the people born during that time, but there are still people alive who were born in the 30s. And during those windows of time, there was war, right? The 30s and the 40s, where global war, where there was extreme trauma. Now, even if you go back in history, further time, which we're all descendants of them too, there has been trauma, massive trauma. And if you're a light leader, you're an energy worker, you're a healer like me, you probably have lifetimes of being burnt at the cross. You know this one, hunt down as a witch, all kinds of things. Maybe you were beheaded in some lifetime, hung in some lifetime. Those are real traumas. Maybe you were murdered in some lifetime. Those things exist in our ancestral lineage, even if you don't believe in past lives, which at this point, if you don't believe in past lives, just let's align with the physics here. Physics, there are parallel realities, infinite dimensions. They're all going on right now somewhere, and then some version of you exists. Physics. I mean, you can't deny the physics of it, okay? We call those past lives, but they're parallel existences, right? So even if you still won't believe in that, that's okay. You're somewhere, your ancestry went through that, somewhere your lineage, and that ancestry. And if you didn't listen to the episode on the DNA, please go back and listen to that. That ancestry stored up the energetic traumas in your own DNA. And you're carrying the DNA from your lineages that have that trauma. Now, let's bring it home here because so many of you are divine goddesses, mission-driven, heart-centered goddesses, light leaders. Some of you resonate as light warriors. That's not my word of choice necessarily, but you're a light leader, visionary. You're here to make impact. You're here to make change. You're here to live your highest fulfillment. You're here to be the best expression of yourself. Well, if there's a trauma stored in your DNA, that trauma could show up by the time it gets to you as breast cancer. Why? Because somewhere in your lineage, you were unnurtured, because this is the area of the breast area, the heart center area, the area of nurturing, love, compassion. So somewhere in your lineage, and it could have been you, or it could have been your ancestors, there might not have been enough love and compassion. And what I'm saying is, because we're descendants of this time where there was like war, living alive today, our grandparents, our parents and our grandparents were living during the 30s and the 40s where there was global war. And those people were living to survive. They were just trying to survive. And when I said linking it to astrology, it was the time when Pluto, the planet Pluto, which is death, the house of death and transformation, was in the sign of Leo. I'm just double checking as I pause in my consciousness to make sure that I'm correct at that, because I don't know where that came from entirely. But I knew that it was meant to come through. Yes, at that time, Leo is the sign that potentially can be the narcissist. I'm not saying all Leos are narcissists, but I'm saying that window of time was designed now for us to eventually heal and resolve the wounds of the narcissist. But why were the narcissists being born at that time? Because that's what they needed to be in order to survive. Okay, you may say, what does this have to do with shadow work? But I'm trying to draw the line for you here of what trauma healing is and how it's linked to our ancestors. It's in our own DNA. And I want to bring it around to how it's related to you living your best life and your highest fulfillment, is that energetic of that narcissistic program. I just have to survive. I can't think of anything. I can't feel anything. I just have to plunge ahead to survive. That is how that generation born in the 30s and the 40s of this lifetime and lifetimes before, where people were beheaded and hung and burnt at the stake and horrible things were done to humans, horrible things that we would never even consider doing now, and are some of them still being done to animals. Disrespect and dishonor of the human and animal life. Even now, I mean, you go on an airplane, some of these airlines, you're treated like cattle, herded in. No respect, no honor, no care. Putting another example, just putting money before human life or animal life, even quality of life. All of these are traumas that we're resolving, and they're affecting us. Now, linking it back to the astrology, the sign of Leo sometimes can be equated to narcissist. Not always, but the sign of Pluto, the planet Pluto in the sign of Leo, which was happening during that window of time of the 30s, mid to late 30s and early 40s, I believe. I'm getting this psychically, so you may astrologically, you can chart it back, but give me some latitude there because I'm not looking at an exact chart. But that's what that would be representative of. So the issue then becomes, We are the descendants who are here to heal and resolve those traumas. And so if we're talking about, for example, I mentioned breast cancer as a trauma through the lineage of not being loved or nurtured, or not feeling loved or nurtured, or not giving or receiving the loving and nurturing and compassionate care that one needs. That would be the trauma. That's just a marker. And I'm being very general here. Please know I'm not being specific as I normally would, but that would be a trauma that would need to be cleared, healed, then resolved. Let's mention some other types of traumas, because trauma is what I'm defining in this umbrella of shadow work. Let's say you're a business entrepreneur or a solopreneur, and you are working with clients who are ungrateful or unappreciative. That you might not think has anything to do with a trauma, but it could easily have to do with a trauma of being neglected or ignored, or not cared for, or not appreciated, or not valued. Now, that same type of trauma in your own family, you could have been raised with that and not even realize. Because again, the parents and the grandparents have been narcissists. They weren't able to give the love, the nurturing, the care. They just had to survive. They were raised in a society where they just had to survive. We're healing those wounds. They're affecting us in our lives. So if your business is attracting clients to you who are, let's say, not grateful or not recognizing the value you're offering or not appreciating that, it could come from such a wound, a trauma in your unconscious. Let's give some more examples, because these are traumas that we deal with in everyday life and we don't realize how they're affecting us. Let's use the idea you want to attract a love partner. But if you haven't been loved or haven't been appreciated or valued, maybe that would interfere. I want to bring this to the entrepreneurs. Let's say your business is not quite prospering or attracting the clients or the clienteles or the students that you want to be working with. Very likely it's because you're not vibrationally resonating for those people or with those people, because there's some kind of unconscious block or trauma in your way. Same thing if you're not making quite the money that you want to make. That means your energetic field, which you are more than a physical body, right? We can talk about this when we get into multidimensional aspects of who we are, but your energy field is not resonant with the kind of people who are your ideal avatar, your client, your community that you're meant to serve. And so whatever is unconscious in your field energetically might not be a belief or a belief system, but it's something that maybe is a stuck or stored trauma. It could be unworthiness, not deservable, not feeling worthy, not feeling deservable, right? Not feeling deserving, not feeling like your work matters or that your work's being paid attention to. Those could be it. That has to be addressed. That's a form of trauma healing. It falls under the umbrella of shadow work. Let's say you have some self-sabotaging patterns. For example, let's say you procrastinate, or you know what you have to do, but you're not doing it. Let's say that's a self-sabotaging pattern. We'll explore a few of those. Now, that could come from something you're unconscious of. For example, you're maybe afraid to change. Maybe you feel that you're procrastinating because you're delaying something that you perceive to be too hard or too difficult. And that could be a fear of taking something on that might be too hard or too difficult to you. Of course, it's just fear, just a shadow. It's not true, because if you're being called to it, if you feel that you want to do it, but you're procrastinating. So here we have multiple levels and layers of something that's a shadow. Self-sabotaging patterns, procrastination, a fear of change, a fear of something going wrong, a fear of taking on too much. All these things can interfere with you doing what you're really here to do, or living the best life. And so you procrastinate. Another example of self-sabotaging pattern along the lines of procrastinating could be that you're procrastinating because some part of you feels as if, or is worried, that if you do something, you're not only avoiding some kind of potential gain, you could be indulging in some kind of pain. So let's say your procrastination is with taking on dieting or exercising or writing that manuscript you want to write or writing the book you want to write or getting your website built or adding that new page to your website or doing your podcast or whatever it is you're procrastinating on, right? Maybe you could be trying to avoid pain, or the procrastination could be that you're just seeking some kind of pleasure because unconsciously you might be perceiving that that's going to be too much hard work, or you might be just saying, I need pleasure. Well, why do you need pleasure? Maybe you're indulging in eating or watching Netflix instead, or watching the ball game or watching a movie instead, whatever it is, because there's more pleasure there. Well, what does that mean? Maybe unconsciously, this is all hypothetical. Maybe unconsciously, some part of you is seeking pleasure. And maybe that's because in some lifetime, let's just say, you didn't have enough pleasure. And maybe the soul's agenda is for you to learn real pleasure, but you're potentially using it to self-sabotage by pleasuring yourself with excessive spending, eating, drinking, smoking, watching TV, watching movies on Netflix, video gaming, who knows, right? So those are self-sabotage patterns of procrastination, that there's something deeper that the soul wants to experience some form of pleasure. And you're just misappropriating time and energy. And the soul maybe wants for you to learn how to have pleasure and experience pleasure in ways that are healthy and good, right, and appropriate. And once you clear, heal, and resolve those traumas that are blocking you or keeping you stuck in the old ways of thinking and behaving, once you're free of that, you're like, oh my God, let me go do that website. Oh my God, let me go get those headshots taken. Oh my God, let me go build that new let me go do that podcast. Let me go, and now I can do it because I know that I have pleasure in my life and I'm doing it. I'm healing, and all those energy blocks are lifted. Now, this may seem very entangled to some of you, but see, these are the levels and layers that we go to. This is the levels and layers I go to, because the energy of our unconscious is so vast. And I'm not just talking just about the mind. You see, our limitless potential lies beyond healing and resolving these kinds of wounding patterns that are so entangled with multiple layers of who we are and how we are experiencing our lives and how we are presenting ourselves. And we're unconscious of these aspects. So this is why the shadow work is required to bring it to the surface so we become aware of it and so that we can heal and resolve them. Healing traumas is not just about the highly traumatized state that I referenced at the onset, such as a rape or a murder or being a war veteran or an extreme disaster, having a whole, like what happened in Lahaina, Maui, or these are real traumas, of course. Of course they are. And the people anyone who's ever involved in trauma states like that, of course, it's so important. Losing a loved one, death, disease, divorce, those are real traumas, of course. And we all have gone through some traumas like those, or not all of us maybe, but many. And we need trauma healing for that. But what I am suggesting, more than suggesting, overtly saying in this podcast, is that we are all living with everyday traumas that are blocking and stopping us, that we're unconscious of, that we are here to heal and resolve so that we can really live the lives we came here to live and be the best expressions of ourselves, reach and experience our highest fulfillment, and really make an impact in the world and have the global impact, leave the lasting legacy we're here to leave. And it's only through healing the traumas. So we talked about self-sabotage. Let's talk about a few more. It's really only through healing the traumas, because all the traumas are the stuck in unconscious densities, heavinesses, dramas that block us. So let's say you want in your career. We talked about like attracting clients that you're more resonant with. Let's say you want to make more money or you want to break through, let's say, a glass ceiling of your own finances. In order to do that, there's all kinds of inner money work that needs to be done. And it's not just money, working on your money issues. It's working on your sense of self-worth, your sense of self-value, your sense of what's possible for you, your sense of what's available to you. And those things, there can be layers of unconscious traumas. Let's say that in order to get to your next level of financial prosperity for your business or your work or service, you need to up level your own sense of worth and value about what you're offering and what your products and service offerings are and the value that you're selling or offering into your community. See, there's inner work there. One of my colleagues was recently saying, how did you release the old kind of clients that you had once and invite in the new elevated avatar? And I was saying to her, and she was saying, I feel guilty. She said she felt guilty for not, about being not wanting to help those people who, in her experience, didn't have money. They just couldn't afford her services. All of that. The first thing is she needs to release the guilt. And that's not something you can just do with your mind. You can't just say guilt, go away, right? The guilt is energy. And there's a reason that guilt is in your energy field. And that guilt, and I'm using this again, hypothetical, just as an example, that guilt is holding space in your energy field. It is a trauma. It's a wound. Why is someone carrying guilt? Now, I could go down a whole list of reasons. Why is someone carrying guilt? Well, maybe their mother made them feel guilty, or maybe their father or maybe somewhere in their past, they didn't use their power wisely. And so they abused their power. And so they took on the energy of guilt so that they would never abuse their power again. And they can't get past to the next level with the new avatar until they heal and resolve this guilt and reclaim their power to you and reaffirm clear contracts, for example, that might be in the way, stopping them or blocking them from really claiming their power and working at their highest fulfillment and having that level of abundance and prosperity come to them. You see, there are so many levels and layers to trauma healing. And this is why we call it trauma. And it could be linked. I mean, I could give you whole stories of how we sabotage ourselves, block ourselves, limit ourselves, stop ourselves, interfere with our own selves. We create these false illusions. This is another one of how we can stand in our own way. Let's say you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, or some kind of light leader, which you are if you're listening to this, and maybe you want to do tarot card readings, or maybe you want to serve in a new way, and you're blocking or limiting yourself in some way, and you feel unrecognized, so you become like this false arrogance, right? Maybe people aren't seeing you or recognizing you, so you become this false arrogance and this false superiority. I've had this happen on Facebook to me, actually, where I'll post something and some word triggers somebody, and then they post something like, I'll look at it and I'll be like, it's literally, they're just on some kind of rant or rave about how they could unravel my brain and why, I don't even know, like there's this false sense of arrogance and supremacy. That kind of thing will alienate people, will block you. And if you've ever worked with someone who's like that, they'll attempt to make you feel like you're less than them. I have a good example. Years and years ago, I hired a guy to help me. He was a man, a boy. He was a boy. And in fact, in two cases, very close together, because I repeated the pattern before I really saw it. There were two now that are lighting up. Both of them were boys posing as men, right, in an adult male's body. And both of them had this white male arrogance supremacy. Both of them false arrogance. So I paid them both a lot of money up front to help me. Both of them were healers. This is many years ago, many, many years ago. Both of them were triggered by me in both cases. In both cases, I said to them, I don't want to work with you anymore. I would like the money back. They were both highly abusive to me. White, male arrogance supremacy. Please, I'm not judging all men. I'm not making this a blanket statement. I'm talking about two people from my past who I hired to help me, paid them money up front, were highly abusive to me because of ridiculous reasons, like ridiculous, illogical reasons. And when I said, I don't want to work with you anymore, I'd like my money back, they wouldn't give it to me. So we've all been down that kind of a road. But what really happened was they were just so falsely arrogant that they were judging me when I brought my pain to them. They could not handle it. They weren't true healers. They couldn't handle what I brought to them to help me to resolve. They couldn't handle it. So they got abusive, which wasn't what the issue was. And when I said, give me my money back, I don't want to work with you, they wouldn't. Now, that is a great example of a male arrogant. What they did afterwards was so condescending through the whole thing. It was so condescending to me, right? Those people are self-sabotaging, because if they had been able to work with me, I would have stayed with them. These are examples of false arrogance and supremacy, self-sabotage. There are so many of these programs. I'll give one more and then I'm going to start to wrap up. Another false program, that's trauma. Because by the way, why does false arrogance come? It comes from a deeply wounded place in another person where they themselves are carrying a trauma of being unrecognized or not valued or not appreciated or demasculinated in this case, or suppressed or repressed or woman hater. Both of them have that woman hater energy. Both of them. That's why I call them male arrogant supremacy. By the way, we can see this in some world leaders. Okay, but the point is that is a trauma underneath there where they were not treated as whoever they want to be. So they've propped themselves up through egoic identification and made other people less than them so that they could feel better about themselves, right? That is not the truth of who they are. That was a false program running, unconscious in their shadow, that they weren't even aware of in that moment, because in that moment, they just made me wrong. They just made me wrong. I was the wrong one, right? And because I've always taken 100% responsibility, I was more than willing to be wrong for them. I made myself wrong. I had to clear that out. Right and wrong, that's another one. That's a good one, where we make ourselves right and someone else wrong, where someone else is right, we're wrong. That creates what I call a program of divide and conquer. I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right. When that happens, we go into opposition, and then we have disharmony. We see it on the global stage, but it happens in our businesses, in our careers, with our relationships, with our partners, with our spouses, with our loved ones, with our siblings, with our clients, our students, right? That's unconscious patterning. That's also a form of self-sabotage. So all of this stuff, it's all trauma. I could go on and on about this, you see, because these are the ways that we interfere. We can't break through our own glass ceilings if we're not healing and resolving the unconscious traumas within us, the shadow. If we don't realize that we're living in a life right now where we're walking around as humans with traumas and not knowing or identifying them as traumas. These are some of the ones I've mentioned, right? Not worthy, not good enough. It's not possible for me. This won't work for me. I can't do this. I'm not able to do this. I'm not important. I'm not special enough. I don't matter. No one's listening to me. No one's watching me. No one's paying attention to my posts. No one's chatting. Vanity metrics. I don't matter. I don't care. Nobody cares about me. These are all traumas. We may not call them traumas. We may not see them as traumas, but they are, because once you're free and liberated from the energetics of that, because you can tell, then you realize it's a trauma. It's energy in your field that's stopping or blocking you or keeping you stuck. And I'm pausing here because we don't realize, because we're walking around with that, thinking that that is normal, thinking that we can overcome it by either pushing or forcing our way through, or thinking or believing that somehow we can change it with affirmations or playing it out and making other people miserable. Like I will tell you, from those two men that I referred to, it took me years to heal within myself the abuse that came from those two men. But that was just this lifetime, because those men, I know who they are from other lifetimes. Now, this is where we can get into the woo-woo, but they exist on the world stage. My healing of that helped affected the global population to realize some of these men who are leaders in the world are just male, arrogant supremacists. Maybe they're white, maybe they're not white, whatever. We don't need that. Because when we heal energy and resolve energy, it affects the population. Ripple effect. Domino effect, right? 100th monkey effect. Because ultimately all energy is part of one source, right? So these traumas is what I'm saying. I realize this is a very elaborate conversation, that there's lots of layers to this, but I am attempting to impress upon you how important it is for us to heal and resolve our traumas so that we can succeed in whatever areas of life we're meant to, so that we can make those impacts that we want to make, so that we can leave the lasting legacy we're here to leave, so we can really help future generations. Because as we resolve the traumas of our ancestors that are literally in our own DNA and in our own energy fields, we free up future generations from having to carry that forward. See? And in this process of doing this, by the way, which I haven't even mentioned here, more of our extraordinary gifts come online. More of our psychic abilities naturally and organically start to come online. More of our intuitive abilities, more of our empathic nature. We become more loving, kind people because we're no longer stuck in our own pain, inflicting it on others. Because I can assure you, those two men that I referenced, boys, who inflicted that trauma on me, they were carrying trauma as well from their ancestors and from their lineage. And they inflicted it on me. And fortunately for me, I found a fabulous healer. And I've discovered within myself, because of that, a fabulous healer. And I healed wounds of my ancestors. So now I see those two people as old karma that I had to resolve. But this is what I'm saying, these levels and layers. And during that time, I might be sounding like this is a personal thing, but it affected my work, because as I was healing those traumas, I wasn't really able to show up in the best version of myself. I was carrying the pain. I'll say a few more things. Let's say you want to have a podcast, or some kind of, you want to speak, or maybe you're afraid to speak publicly for your business and you're not finding your true authentic voice. Now, maybe you don't feel safe or comfortable to speak authentically or to express yourself authentically. That is a trauma. Why? Especially if you've got any kind of thyroid issue or any kind of teeth issue, mouth, gums issue. That's all a trauma stuck there. Multiple traumas with multiple layers. Learning how to express yourself authentically, feeling safe to express yourself authentically, could be the very stuff that's stopping you from having your podcast, or speaking out on your podcast, or speaking clearly and authentically on other people's podcasts. Believing that it's possible for you, knowing that it's possible, all of that can be energetics within you that can be healed and resolved, released, and transmuted. So that when you get out there and you do speak publicly, or you make peace with, you're going to find another alternative way that's more authentic and right for you and your business. When you finally do, you're free and liberated, and you get to be more of the expression of who you are. And then you get to succeed more and share what you're here to share. Again, make the lasting legacy, leave the impression, make the global impact you're here in an authentic way that feels good and right for you. But if you're afraid of speaking up, or not sure that your voice will be heard, or somewhere you haven't been heard, or somewhere you've been neglected, or somewhere you haven't been listened to, and that is pain. If you have something to say and express in this world and you're not able to express it, or somehow you're blocking yourself or stopping yourself or afraid or worried that it'll be received, that is a trauma that can be cleared, healed, and resolved. It's all energy. God, I could go on. I'd love to give more. These kinds of traumas, clearing, healing, and resolving these kinds of traumas are part of shadow work, and they fall under that umbrella. And this is the work of the gifted healer. Fortunately for me, I know because I did so much deep, deep work for myself in my own healing journey, I had to do so much trauma healing. A lot of people don't necessarily know that about me, but I really had a lot of deep emotional wounding that I had to clear and resolve about, not being listened to or not being heard or not being honored or not being appreciated, or not being valued. Like, those are things we all have, whether we know it or not. And we have different kind of storylines and different kinds of patterns. But because I did that deep work for myself, I've learned how to do it for others like that. Because now it's more about, I'm just clear of my own patterning and I'm more aligned with just the light that I can bring through for people, the clarity, just the knowing of what's in their field. I can see their field in a lot of cases. I can see their shadows in a lot of cases. I can see the masks of what they've put on so that they can survive and thrive. But that's not their authentic self necessarily. I can see the shadows they hide behind. I can see it. I can listen and be told. I can get guidance for them. This is what I do inside of the Sacred Visionary Mentorship. And we do go deep, and it is not for the faint of heart. It is not for people who don't really want to take responsibility. You have to be willing to take responsibility for your own shadow. You can't just blame it on somebody else, right? You have to know how to handle and deal with triggers. We'll talk more about that in the next episode and all the different ways we can do things. But this is what I'm saying, is that in order to be our magnificence, the truth of who we are, we got to clear away these shadows and these traumas, and we have to be willing to take responsibility. I know I mentioned that in the last episode. We have to be willing to do this hard work. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, but it is required if we truly, truly do want to be our most magnificent selves, if we truly do want to live our highest fulfillment, if we truly do want to be the brilliance that we are, that we really are, if we truly want to reclaim our power, if we to be our most authentic best selves, if we truly want to leave a lasting legacy, if we truly want to succeed and prosper, this kind of work is required. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. If you'd rather sit at home and watch Netflix, no problem. That experience is here for you. And you have every right to that. And I'm not judging you. If that's what you'd rather, if you'd rather drink alcohol every night of the week, and there's no problem with drinking alcohol, that's an experience here. If you'd rather just go to the football games, that's no problem. If you'd rather just spend in the stores or spend your money frivolous, no problem. Those are the experiences of the 3D. You can do that. I have no judgment of it. But if you're like me and you have a mission here and you have a calling and you want to make an impact and you want to share magnificence of some kind in this world, your brilliance, whether it's through writing, speaking, teaching, leading, because you're some kind of light leader. Maybe you're some kind of teacher, business entrepreneur, solopreneur. Maybe you're already on stage, but you know that there's more. Many of you have done so much already. You've done breath work. You've done vision boarding. You've done manifesting. Maybe you've done some great healing work. And if you're already brilliant, right? But there's more magnificence in you. That's what trauma healing and shadow work is. We go way deeper than surface level stuff. So if this podcast episode wasn't too much for you, then you're my jam, right? Because that's where we do this work. We do this kind of work together because you're worth it and you deserve it, and your audience deserves it. Your community deserves it. Your children, your offspring, and future generations deserve it. we can make global impact because all energy is connected. We're all connected. And our trauma healing is what heals and resolves it, not only for ourselves, frees us and liberates us from this kind of old stuff, frees us up to be our most magnificent best selves, and delivers it down through the lineages. It's all connected. This is why I highly encourage you to listen to the episode about the DNA. And if you don't already have the free gift from me about activating the DNA, the dormant DNA, what it's good for, and how you can work it for yourself and learn to activate it, plus a free activation, please get that. We'll put it in the show notes. The free gift is lorispagna.com/free gifts/DNA. Okay, I hope this has been helpful. I love you guys so much. I'm so grateful to you for sticking this out because I realize it was a very, very packed podcast episode about trauma healing, part 2 in 3 parts about really working with your shadow aspects. Next episode, we will go a little lighter, but in a whole new arena of working with the shadow, all the different kinds of tools and ways you can do that. I hope this has been helpful to you. And if it has been, please, please share it, share the episode, make comments, give it a rating, do any kind of sharing or contributing you can to give back. All right, you guys, I love you so much. I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to sign off for now. And I'm sending you lots and lots of love. Farewell for now. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening today. If you loved the show and if you benefited in any way, if it helped you to up level or expand your consciousness, if you gained any new insights or ideas, if it made you think or become more aware, or if there were some strategies or intuition that you may have benefited from in any way, would you please do me 2 easy and simple favors? First, if you would be willing to leave a review, it would mean the world to me. I'd be so grateful. And second, if you're willing to share this show with anyone else who would benefit, you can either post it on your social media or just email it to someone and share it with another person or any other people. It would be so awesome. This kind of thing is so helpful in expanding consciousness on the planet and helping others to benefit from this kind of teaching, which just simply isn't generally readily available in the mainstream. So sharing it really helps others benefit and helps our planet evolve and awaken. Plus, expressing gratitude and generosity in this way will also expand your capacity to give and receive even more. Either way, I just want to say thank you so much for being here and for participating and for sharing, and overall, just for being the magnificent, the spectacular, the brilliant, the fabulous, the wonderful you that you truly are, and for allowing yourself to be the very best version of you today and every day. All my love and gratitude to you.